Hello, welcome all. We would just start in another 5 minutes, or sorry, 3 minutes at the scheduled time.
Yes.
Yeah, hello, Anirban. Rajay here.
Hey, Rajay. Thanks for joining. I think it's so first of all, welcome all participants. Good morning, good evening, and yeah, good afternoon for people joining from India. Hello. Hi, Pankaj.
Hello.
So
Good afternoon.
we are just at top of the hour. Maybe we'll just give a couple of minutes and then we'll get started. Hope this is fine. Okay, great. So we're at the start of the hour. So welcome again. Welcome all participants to our webinar on S/4HANA Embedded Analytics and Value Proposition. So in this session, what we like to do is, I'll just probably give a short introduction about myself. And yeah, so first of all, a warm welcome. Now this is a session in which we want to give a practical overview about S/4HANA Embedded Analytics. I have been a product manager since the inception of S/4HANA Embedded Analytics in 2014 to 18. And thereafter, I went on as customer advisory and consulting for a number of strategic projects. And I've been part of a number of digital transformations which have been going on. So in this webinar, what I wanted to present to you, it's basically, yeah. So we wanted to give you a highlight of, and now I'm working at Kimberly-Clark. I am not working with SAP. It has been 16 years for me at SAP. So this will be sharing my experience as a product manager, as a customer, and what works well in the digital transformation project. So with that, I would like to then go on with this. Yeah. So just a couple of things before we start. What we'll do is we have extensive time for Q&A as well. So I have a couple of areas. I'll just go through them and then we will have time for Q&A at the end. Now with that, let me see, let's get started. So for our agenda today, we have a 4-part series. Now, what we want to do today is, first of all, embedded analytics is, before we get into the embedded analytics, we have a few steps. So I want to walk you through the context of the whole digital transformation. How are the projects set up? What is critical? And then in the second part, what I'd like to explain is, or just share experience, what has worked for me, what are the best practices, and some of the value proposition. And lastly, would like to go through a little bit of details on the S/4HANA itself in terms of what have been the simplifications and data models and why this is relevant and what impact it has on the final topic of our embedded analytics. Yeah. So with that, I don't, I had a poll where we understood that almost, roughly 40% of the participants are already in a project. We had roughly around 30% of the participants who are preparing for a project, and another 30% who are roughly upskilling for a new project. So I think on this slide, I would just like to highlight it for the context that what's happening today is, no business is untouched by the forces of digital transformation. Yeah, whether in terms of business, what we are seeing is, we are seeing upcoming new business models. We are seeing complete industry being disrupted, globalization which is going on. And in terms of operational, we are seeing companies reeling under cost pressure. We are living in very times like this where we have, because of COVID, there are a lot of things which is happening. So what's happening is, most of the companies today need to rethink and need to start with a transformation project. Secondly, if we look at what is driving this is all the IT related aspects. What do we do with AI, ML, big data, RPA? How do we get on those things? So with this context, now this, I believe every company, all the participants here in some form or shape, you will be in part of the discussion. Now, with this context, I'd like to identify what, in my experience, what we have done. So first of all, before we get into the embedded analytics, there is what we need to do is start this whole transformation project. And there are two aspects. One is the product agnostic. I will walk through the product agnostic approach first, where we'll just set up what does a digital transformation project consist of and how do you execute it. And the next step will be, how do you get value with the analytics? Now, this is the first thing will be what will be the business case. In terms of business case, now what we are looking at in most of the organizations, what we are looking at is we have the executive meetings, we have the feedback, and then what the target settings, talent development, and then we have the collaboration with external stakeholders. Yeah. Now, important point to remember is what we have is, I just need to, maybe there's some of these. Okay, there's been some, maybe if I request, people, if they can stop drawing, that will be great. I'll just reshare. Let me just stop sharing and reshare again. Request the participants, there's been some drawing on this. So, if you can just, yeah. Okay. So coming back here. Yeah, so for in interest of other participants, please refrain from putting any pictures on this. So yeah, so in the part of now the important thing is how big you want to have your digital transformation project. Now, many companies, I have been working on this for 5 years now. There are cases where you have this company wide. So you want to have digital transformation for the entire global enterprise, or you want to start with one regional projects. You want to minimize the risk. You say, I want to start with one particular area. Now, important thing is the next steps is, once you decide on the scope, the most important thing, or the 3 important things here, is the process. Now, what do you do with the process? Would you be just lifting and shifting the existing process which you have been doing? Would you just tweak it, do an optimization, or you take the benefits of all the technology today and you would redesign your process. Yeah. Now, what do you do about technology? Would you completely re-platform or you would upgrade your process? Yeah. And then finally, are you looking at new models or you're looking to safeguard revenue? So if you look at it, what's happening today is the digital natives have put in a lot of aspects where we have the pressure is on the existing incumbents. And now most of the companies, what we are talking with, and myself, we are also part of the project where we are actually, we need to planning on this. But before that, the scope is important, which we need to go through. Now, what is required in this case is that we have the different phases. We have the strategy and business case. This is product agnostic. So what we need to identify is the driver goals. What are the objectives here? Then what we need is the business models. Now, as defined from the scope, do we want to have a complete across the globe, what will be in my scope? So these are the discussions which you need even before you start any of the product selection. So this is more of the strategy. This is more of the business case and the plan which you there and develop the ROI proposition. Now, once you are here, what you need to do is then you are going into the business architecture and you are getting into the more details. You have the process architecture, because the analytics needs to be in conjunction with the process. So as I will illustrate in a little bit with some examples later, we need to identify what is my different process areas and how do I get into each of these and what is the benefit. So till now, it is product agnostic and you could decide, okay, this is the project, this has been approved, and how do I actually, you haven't selected any solution. Now, the next part here is what we will get into, assuming that you have selected S/4HANA and within that, with the embedded analytics, how will I benefit in my project? So this will be what we'll illustrate next. Now, once this decision is done, what you will do is you're taking the product selection. And in this case, what we need to do is we are designing the what we call the global template, or we're defining the reference architecture. And here we are mapping the capability with a product map, with the solution architecture, data models, which we have to do here. Yeah. Next up, what we have done after that is we want to then the build and execute phase, where we will be going through the execution, planning, etc. And finally, we get into the execution of this project. Yeah. Solution, build, and design. So this is the 4 phases. Now, after that, what we have is, and this is the important thing, what we want to share is, in my experience, what has happened till now, yeah, and what are the different best practices which we have. So when we were looking at, one of the key thing, and this is a Gartner survey, the executives are asked, okay, the challenge is everybody sees that we need to do something. Now, you have to identify what is my primary metric which I want to improve. What will be the main essential source on which I will base the digital transformation. And what was startling was more than half of them had no metric. And this is a challenge because many of the projects which had a start and stop, and many of the projects are in actually limbo, where many times what we have seen is that we fail to realize the value which was promised in the business case. And here are a few things which I'd like to then identify with what of the things we have done here. Now, if you look at, this is the most critical one key takeaway I want to have from this webinar is this particular slide, where we have the digital transformation value equation. Now, first of all, it is very essential you drive what is the target. Now, once you have the target, and you need to do a continuous monitoring of the ROI. And value is accumulated only when we have the process, we have the technology, and the most important and underrated is the talent strategy. Because currently I'm being part of one of the global transformation where we see how much important is developing the skills in the digital talent. And I think that's where the 60% of the people who want to upskill, that is really important, because what happens is if you miss any of these two spaces, any of these, it would not realize in the value. So just to give you examples, what has happened when you're talking of analytics and you're talking about all the new data and all what technology you could do, it could be a very technology centric. But if you are devising your project based on technology centric, you not get the value, because what you need to have is your organization need to have a talent strategy as well. And they need to have the people who will execute this and combine it with your business. And you'll need to have the process optimization as well. Now, once you have these three factors, then only what you could have is the amplification of these factors, and the digital transformation project would have any value. Yeah. Going on, what we have this is, let me just 1 minute reshare the screen. Yeah, so there was some. So once we have identified the key parameters, now this is an example. What we will need to do is, I mentioned to you about there is a process agnostic piece. Now, once we have identified the drivers, what I need to, let's take an example and then we will drill down how embedded analytics will get into each of this area. So if you're looking at, let's say in finance, now taking from the example previously, what we said is, what is the goal? What do I want to do with this? I want to, as a CFO, my important goal is I want to optimize the finance process and liquidity. Now for these, what will be my value drivers? Now I'm looking at the day sales outstanding. Maybe I'm not doing that great. Maybe there's an issue here, or maybe my the closing for books takes a lot more time than the standard. So that might be imperative where I need to improve, and I start a certain initiative there. Finally, what we do is, now then we have a deep dive, and this is then we need to do a deeper dive into the process area and identify what are the open issues and what is really an area where we have the issue as such. Coming up next is, what we have from SAP is, there is a tool which you can use called as a business scenario recommendation, which will actually analyze your existing systems and can tell you in terms of benchmarking what is possible, what is your current usage, and in case if it is up to mark or there is some potential improvements which can be done. Now, this part, which is very crucial part, and as I just illustrated previously, that if you get into a project hands down with technology, you may not reap the benefits, because this is the softer part, or this is the aspect which you really need to build out the KPIs, the goals, and the process optimization piece. Only then, if you get into the architecture and then you tie it along with the technology and try to bring it, it will have benefit for you. Next up is, what we have is this optimization targets. What we have seen is in terms of there are KPIs we discussed about finance. So this is all across, whether it is sourcing, procurement, or in manufacturing, sales, supply chain. So you could actually, the scope from the digital transformation, you could have by area, or you could actually have across the areas as such. So whatever you are starting with, you need to have these metrics on which you start the project. Yeah. Finally, now what we have is, now this is a report. If you're already an existing ECC customer or an SAP ERP customer, now there is a service from SAP, and what you could get is the business process recommendation. It's a report which is run on your existing system, and per process area, it will identify what are the different value drivers, where there are issues, and where you could improve, and potentially what probably the different solutions which SAP has to offer. Yeah. Now we will take these example, because then now in accounts payable, we will have to looking at the day sales outstanding, and then we can see how with embedded analytics we can have more real-time view and get this issue resolved as such. What you get additionally is, if we drill down into one of these, what is the payable, how many items are open, what is the aging distribution as such. what could be the root cause, how are you benchmarked, because what has one of the benefit of, and this is I would strongly recommend even if you are in the planning stage or you want to start in time. So this is the most important thing, run it before your business case. This will be a key driver for your business case. And here you will get how your company is performing on certain metrics based on uh, what will be, how are you benchmark across the industry as such. Now, once you get through this, and this is the interesting piece, that what happens is today, then once you have the process sorted out, you have the technology in place, you need to mash up the embedded analytics. You need to embed the intelligence in all the business process. Because earlier, what was the challenge was you had separate systems. Now, what we can do is, in just an example, is that if you can always have pattern recognition, you have statistics, so which will identify what are the triggers, what is the issue. It will identify the context, and with the help of machine learning and AI, will actually propose solution. So this is combined with, once you have your hard work done with respect to the process, and once you are infusing the embedded intelligence in the business process, then you start to see the value coming out in your business process. Now, just from the experience, and maybe please do type in your comments and then or your questions, and I will take them in the chat as well. Now, what we said was we have the business, talent, and technology. Yeah, all these three need to come together if your transformation project is to be success. Now, I have been part of many projects where we had three happy. There is a happy path where, and the biggest challenge with these projects is these are multi-million. Now it can cost more, upward of 100 million, and depending upon the size of the enterprise, these are plus upward of 100 million projects if you're doing a complete transformation. And if you have to identify what is the value out of it, you have to have all hands aboard on this. Yeah, your process, talent, and technology. Once you have that, now there have been happy cases. What we are doing is when all three are marching in sync, we have the results which are successful, the value drivers are there, you have the high value use cases, and the most important thing, the talent strategy and the change management. Because if you just look at, there have been people in an organization who have been working on ECC system for almost 15, 20 years. S4HANA is a very big change. You would need their process knowledge, you'll need to upskill them, and you need to get them to the to the new world as such of S4HANA. So there is a significant of investment which is required here. Now, coming to some examples, most of you would have seen that in my project, there was an example where we went into the new user experience offered by SAP. But after the go live in certain customers, people felt they were more comfortable with the previous SAP GUI, and then they actually went back to the old way of working. So many cases, if you don't have these change management in place, you would have issues with respect to getting the value. What we have seen in some cases, and these are the start stop, is you have one particular business unit, you have proven something, but because the value proposition was not very strong, or it was not, that's why I said we have to invest a lot in the business case. You have the challenge with the scalability, because maybe it works in a region. How do I justify another X billion dollars of investment in a separate region or a separate process area? So what you need to do is look at the holistic picture in your organization and have the scale of the digital transformation here. Finally, what we are looking at, and this I want to, from my experience and caution here, is many times the projects we jump head along given the new technology which is there. Somebody is doing, some competitor is doing something cool with new technology, and then we just try to build some amount of technology here, and then the business buy-in takes a long time. There are a number of project losses. And what is the challenge here is, this is the, I would say, the path which is the most challenging. So anytime you're looking at a digital transformation, technology is an enabler. You have to have the other aspects of your process and the talent strategy. And believe me, these are the hard facts. These are the learnings where what I have gone through now 5 years of projects. And this is a quick summary of what is a happy path and what is the fate of many technology driven transformation. You will always have challenge to roll it out to the next region, next phase, because how do you justify the large amount of business dollars which is required for moving into the next phase. Now with this, we come to, we have set the context, we have gone through the value proposition. What we want to go now is a little bit before we get into the embedded analytics is the most important thing. ECC is very different from S4HANA. Yeah, I understood 60% of the people, they're saying, we want to understand or learn what is there. So for the 40% who are already in the projects, this might be some amount of repetition you might see have already. But one important thing is, this is a sample model of ECC database structure. Yeah, analytics, when you're talking of analytics, the most important thing is your data models. How do you build the data models? What is there? Now, one of the biggest change is that the data models, and this, I think I have been repeating this for a long time, that this has a very, very drastic difference or aspect when you move from business suite to S4HANA, because the table structures are very, very different. You see, a lot of tables are not required because you're not doing any aggregates. You're not doing any histories. So now you had a previous analytics or some report which was built in a system and then it was working, but now you have a totally different simplified structure and you need to understand this whole ECC data model. Without understanding this, your analytics will not be complete. Now, another example is the material ledger. So this is a new feature with S4HANA about which helps all our inventory accounting, all the, I want to understand what is my value of inventory I'm holding up. Now, all this goes through and what you are left with a very simplified structure. Now, I just wanted to bring it, this is the standard, and this has been by S4 HANA is there almost now 6 years, but still, important thing is this gets missed out, and many of the projects, it seems that the change management due to the nature of the database changes is exceptionally high, and you need to budget that in your project. Now, can I get an overview of what is the data model, view stack, what I'm working with S4 HANA? What you have is, now this was a analytics dashboard I created when I was some time back. So there will be at least 10% more of the CDS views. This was as of 2020 release. So with the release this year, their numbers will go up. But effectively, you have more than 40,000, or now it'll be almost 45,000 plus views. Now, these are out of the box standard views shipped by SAP. There are hundreds of queries which are there. So important thing is, first of all, before you get into the embedded analytics, you have to also understand the data model. What are the semantics which is out of the box available from SAP, which I can actually use for getting the nice analytics which I want to have. Once you have this, what you see here is you have the database tables. Now, mostly people in ECC world would know all the cryptic names. We had all the tables here. But with S4 HANA, what happens is this is all abstracted out in terms of what we call the core data services or the CDS. Now, this is the most foundational element of your S4 HANA. Now, these are more simplified. This enables exchange of information across your different systems by means of API. You have composite views, you have the basic views, and finally, you have the important thing, the consumption views, which we use for analytics. So in nutshell, what we are doing here is we have a layers of view in terms, very simple business semantics, which is there, which we can out of the box use as a basis for an embedded analytics. To make it more real, let me just give an example. So here we have our ECC tables. Now, this is what, I would say it's almost 20 years for me working on enterprise analytics, and today you'll always see that people would remember these cryptic tables and all what it means. Now, as the new talent comes to your organization, they will not be able to understand the cryptic names, but they will rather have something which they can use in an API in, let's say, in another system. So this is about a sales order. I want to understand what is the sales volume. I want to understand what is the profit margin, other things. So this is what is exposed at the consumption level, and this is all pre-built, and this is available out of the box from SAP. Obviously, there is a big story about how you can extend and you can get your own custom logic to this as well. Now, if you look at it, some of the things now, what SAP has pre-shaped, now there are like some 144 tables which has gone into this particular cube. Yeah. So you have the number of tables, the joins, and other things. So this is something which is very powerful because all these models have been out of the box built and ready for your use. Now with that, what we have is, now with this as a basis, now we get into the embedded analytics. Now, till today, what we have is, we have our ECC system, which is a one-way information only. You are running a number of transactions, and they are going into the ECC system. And then what we do is we then have another system, which is our BW system. In most cases, SAP BW, or now we are having data lake, or we having cloud data stores and other systems, or it could be basically any version of a data warehouse. Yeah. So you would have long times replicating this from your system of records, and you have to put that into your data warehouse, and then this is only a system for analytics. Now, the challenge with this is that there is no real-time reporting, and from the system of engagement or from your data warehouse, if you want to influence any transaction, it is not possible. So that is another challenge which we have. And this was the reason why embedded analytics, what we have, came into being. And we realized long back in 2014, we said how HANA as a database could help this. And with that, the embedded analytics took shape. Now, this is the story of how this all started. So what we are saying is, today in ECC world, what you have is you have series of transactions, and you have learned these cryptic names. You would know this MM20, MM01, VA01. So this is good for all, all what we have been doing for a long, long time. And then you execute one transaction, get into another transaction. But we don't have the possibility that if I'm at a particular transaction, can I actually get into and analytics, and then I want to see, okay, what can I analyze or predict? And I complete the transaction. So this I will illustrate with one recording. So what you have here is a standard example of an S/4HANA screen, where we have in enterprise analytics, we have a lot of these list reports. So what we are dealing with now here is, we have this list. There are a number of open, just to get here. There are a number of requisitions. Now, the purchase requisitions are there, and I want to associate it with a source of supply. Now, instead of just selecting it from a list, now what is great is that you have an analytics here. I have a supplier score, I have the unit price, and I can have it in any other way as well. I could add analytics here, which is relevant for my enterprise. And then instead of just completing one transaction to other transaction, what you have here is you are going from a transaction, you get into the analytics, you select, okay, which is relevant and what is the best value for me. And then you are assigning that source of supply or the supplier for your requisition, and then your purchase order is created. So this is just one example where you have the embedded analytics, the concept of embedded analytics for one process. The important thing will be that you can embed this in all your transactions going forward. Now, important thing here is in S4HANA, everything is about the roles. Yeah. So we are not talking about learning the transaction names, but what we are saying is, let's say you are looking at cash management, or you're looking at inventory, you're looking at purchasing. So there is a role and all these bubble up to you. So all this information and all what you're looking at will be available to you in the format you would want. Next up is what we have here is we have now what it does is now in many of the examples, if you look today, the executives are not working with the ECC system. And what is the challenge? Because if you have entire data, the balance sheet, what you are preparing out of the system, everything is in S4 is in an ECC box. But what we see today is the executives still have we don't have people who would be going into the system because it's too complex. There are too many things to learn. So one of the most important thing was, how can this be made easy? So coupled with the analytics, all the analytics is delivered through what we call is the user experience of Fiori. And in this Fiori experience, it is not about remembering the transaction or having it in a different way, but the three core components is, can I recognize with visuals? Can I have something like a visual filter, which we called a list page? I have a huge list. Can I just filter down with respect to some of the visual filters? This is what we will see in one of the demos. Can I have a list of all the overview pages, which is available, all the cards, which is there for me, and I can take that I save the time in searching the information, and I can actually take an action, and that actually gets into the value realization. Finally, what we are talking about is actually having these casual users, because this is now, let's say I just want to, I'm a purchase manager, I want to see some of the top KPIs, nice styles. If can I be pushed, this can be pushed to your mobile and you can actually use these information. Yeah, because today what happens is there is some analyst who will pull out this data, will create a report, will put it in a presentation, and then we'll take it to the executive by the time there is the data changes as such. So why can't we access this real time? And this is the benefit which we have from S4HANA. Next up is then coupled with analytics, embedded analytics, the vehicle for delivery of embedded analytics is the redesigned user experience of SAP, which is the Fiori user experience. Yeah, and this is where we have you don't need to get into the SAP GUI. You don't need to have any transaction. You just log in with your particular role. And for your particular role, there will be a set of apps. And as you see, there will be tiles and there will be pages which will be relevant and customized to you. Now, what you could do is it follows a principle of progressive disclosure, wherein you get from the main page and then you get into an overview page, and then you could get into the series of analysis, or you could invoke a transaction and then finally you could take an action there and then come back to the transaction. So this is the normal pattern. You start with your Fiori Launchpad and get into the apps. So this is something which we will also have a demo as well. Now with that, what we are saying is now once we have this hybrid transactional model, now what becomes easy is you can actually see what is the pattern, what is the business user trying to do, what are the typical path of analysis, what are the challenges he is always looking at. And then with the help of machine learning and AI and predictive analytics, I can actually embed the intelligence. So instead of you always going through a series of 4 steps, it's like if there is a certain issue, this is arising out of this because I have a model which I tested and this was brought out previously. So this is an important thing and important addition, that how you enrich your S4HANA with respect to embedding the models with the S4HANA so that it knows, wow, what will be the what are the factors and what are the models which is available for me. So in a nutshell, what we have is the first important thing is you're able to visualize all your KPIs in real time. The most important thing is you can actually take an action. Yeah. because this is not possible. And that's what we said, because the system of information and engagement was always different. From a BW, you are not calling a transaction system, or in your data warehouse, you're not calling directly jumping into a transaction. But with embedded analytics S4HANA, what you could say is you could actually decide, and if you want to be doubly sure, you can just simulate what could be the challenge. And then based on what suits well, you could actually take the action. An important thing is the resolution is done then and then there. Now with that, we now get into some of the demos here, which is the meat of this presentation today. So let's start with one simple example here is what I mentioned to you earlier about was this Fiori Launchpad. Now in this Fiori Launchpad, you see there are these number of tiles, and we are not looking into the transactions. So I can have my sales order available to me, tiles like delivery performance, billing documents, what I'm required about my contract spend or purchasing. So this is available to you based on your role. And this is what we initially discussed. Now, with this, you would have multiple apps. So another possibility is search is embedded. So what you could do is, instead of, maybe after a while you have lot many tiles here, as you see, I could actually just go and search for, okay, I'm looking at a sales order. So what are the different orders available? So I can just do a search and I get a sales order and what are the different apps which are available. I want to understand the fulfillment issues which are there with the sales order processing. Now, what you're seeing here is something which we call as a smart business dashboard. I will come to these terminology. These are the different forms which SAP has. Now here, this is a drill down. And after analyzing this issue, what you can get here is you can get into the list. So which particular issue was there, and then you can get into an individual record. Now, once you are in an individual record, you can actually, this is the beauty, that you start with an aggregated records, you drill down, you get into an individual record, and then you can actually solve this, and you see that once you come back, the issue is resolved. This is addition. This is more like self-service, which people or the business users can do if they want to analyze different dimensions, what are available. So if I'm looking at sales area, I'm looking at division, I'm looking at, okay, what are the issues by division? And one of the most important thing is I can actually do user personalization. I can save this as a personal tile. Now, I'm relevant for a certain area. This is my a region or a category. And then with this particular, I can actually save a variant, and then it will appear as my personal tile. And this is visible only to the user, the business user. This is not pushed out to any other, there's the end user personalization capability here, what we have. Next up, what we have is an interesting piece here is S4HANA works with embedded with the another analytics product. We have the analytics cloud. So together, it's a pretty powerful combination, because what you get is, apart from these, you could actually jump into nice looking dashboards. Now this dashboard is called the analytics cloud dashboard, which is embedded right in S4HANA in the Fiori Launchpad. So here I'm looking at issues with respect to billing, customer billing, and what are the disputes which were there. And I want to have resolution to these disputes. So this is a pre-built dashboard, which a business, which is available to a business user, which has been created by an analyst. Yeah. Now, what I can go from here is, and this is pretty powerful, because after the analysis, you can get into any of the different transactions. So this is what the value we were talking about. Now you could get into something called as a customer fact sheet. Now this is, I have all the details about this customer. I need to follow up. Okay, what is the dispute about? Is it a billing issue, pricing issue, and what we can do with this? Yeah. So what we saw here was this a dashboard. Now we get into a second form of analysis. Now this is what we call as a multi-dimensional report. Now from here, this is like a Excel pivot table. I could have same multiple transactions. I could go into the different transactions. I can get into different dimensions back here. So I have the supplier, I get into the supplier, I come back and I see what is the useful information here. Now, next up is, now this part is for somebody who's a business analyst. Yeah. Now the business analyst is required that now you'll see how easy it is for a business analyst just to create some of the reports which we were seeing for a business user previously. Now, if you remember from our previous aspect, what we said, SAP has number of pre-built data models. So here you see a list of these data models which start. And now what you have here is I can actually take any of these data model and sorry for this, there is so we had the data model which we all the views I mentioned to you previously. Now it is important that I am trying to create here a new multi-dimensional report. I need to tag it with a data model after giving certain description, and then I jump into the particular data model. Now all this is the transactions are coming there, and this is sitting right out of the box. So you are actually using the same system where the transactions is being done. Yeah. Now then, once I have this model, this is very quickly, I can preview this and it shows me what, or basically after certain filters, which is there, I could set out some of the filters. And then it says, okay, what is my purchase order value? What is my PO amount? I want to add some dimensions to this. I want to add, this is the overall, I want to add a cost center, I want to add a particular country or a supplier, and I could build it into the rows. Now, this is how very easily, because you have these data models which were available to you, you can just choose very easily from there and have a designer, and then you can create this kind of an analysis. Now, this is something which a business analyst is doing. And now once you activate this, you can actually push this to somebody who is a business user, and then we can go forward. Now, next up is, we again switch roles and we get into something of a business user. So here we are looking at a sales scenario. Now, all the important, now this are called analytical cards. This is an overview page consisting of the cards. Now I can customize and I can set my default values, my currency, exchange rate, etc. And then I can see, okay, what particular area I am responsible for. And I can have all this information related to that in one place. Now with these, I have, this is the second piece, that from this particular card, I could either stop my analysis here, or I want to solve an issue or want to see more details about this, I can get into a different kind of an analysis. So what you see here is what we said, discussed previously, a pivot table kind of, we have the multi-dimensional report. You could freely add in the different dimensions. Now, all this is possible because a lot of this hard work of modeling and making the semantic model, you remember the 40,000, 50,000 plus views, which we were talking about. All this is you're just using right after the box. Now, what we could go into another scenario is there's in ERP, we have a lot of lists. We are working with a lot of lists. So there is something called as a list report. I can get into, second version was a list report. Then I could get into a little bit more analysis where I want to get into individual details about these lists. Yeah. Continuing with these analysis, what we have is different forms where I can actually look at the other issues. I'm looking at, back order. And if you look at, this is where the embedded analytics is tying back to what I said about the process, because you need to, this information is solving the business problem or the process, what we were talking earlier. So the embedded analytics need to go hand in hand with your process and what information you're seeing here. Now, this really, in example, it takes almost, in some cases, I was working with a customer where just to get the real-time view of the organization, many times it just takes a week or at least minimum couple of days if there are a number of complicated joins and other things which you need to do mashups before you can even process the result. Now this challenge, the benefit with S4HANA is all this thing is done in real time and you are getting all this available now. Yeah, you're getting into what are my issues, and this is like last what we had, this smart business drill down, and then it offers you multiple facilities, multiple types of analytical options for you to analyze, and then you can go ahead and resolve these particular issues. Now with that, we come to our last scenario where we were talking about this whole visual filters, and this is something what we called as a analytical list page. Now what you see here is the top portion is about all the visual filters. So I don't have the typical filters where I need to enter. I can just select on one of these aspects and then it just filters the list below. Because in operational analytics, if you look at many users, what they are doing is actually working through a large list. So in an organization, typically you'll have thousands of sales order coming in every day. You'll have thousands of purchase requisitions, or you have, like, in this particular case, there's a finance scenario. There's a collection list which I need to monitor, and I need to follow up with the customer to get the money back as such. Yeah. So here, what you see here is now there is this huge list. I just don't, I have these filters which are there. I could also adapt filters. I could see what are open and what is not assigned. Yeah. So very quickly, I can jump into this just by the 2 clicks on the filters. And then what we have here is we go through a very simple process. We start assigning this, and this is actually you're doing a transaction here. Yeah. So typically you would have, and this is seamless because now within the analytics, you have actually jumped into the transaction. And if you were doing in previous case, this would not be one seamless process. So very quickly, in very short time, what you see is you could walk through a large list, and then this is possible as such. I see a number of questions. We are almost at time also. So I'll just do a quick recap, and then a couple of minutes I'll just open for questions. So what you saw here today is the embedded analytics. We discussed about the CDS views. We discussed about the end user tools and the different forms of analysis which is available. So we walked you through the PIVO-like multidimensional report, smart business KPI, the list page, overview pages, and the analytics cloud. Very quickly, just visually, what we had, these are all the pre-built analytical use case or patterns which are available with S4HANA, and you can make use of this in your particular scenario or in business process. Now with that, for the business analyst, there are a number of apps, because you might want to create your own query. You might want to create a particular report which the business user would want. So S4HANA has a very rich set of key user tools, or which can be used by the business analyst to create all the reports. So here is a snapshot of the tools. As such, we have we saw a demo of the KPI report. We could create custom CDS as well. We have the SAP delivered CDS. We could create customizations on top of that. We can create our own queries or extensions as such. Yeah. So very quickly, what you saw just in terms of technology, there were these database tables we walked through previously. Now SAP has done a lot of modeling. So you have this ABAP CDS, which is available for you. Now what you saw here is all this is the new user experience with Fiori. Now this is possible. You have these ABAP CDS, you have just one line of code in S4, and you can create a service out of it, which is available to you in an API, or you could just make a user interface on top of it. This is the Fiori UI. You had seen the embedded analytics dashboards with Analytics Cloud. So we have there's an Analytics Cloud component which is available as well, and you could actually have these. There is a part of BW. So there is a BW engine, which is also available with S4HANA, which helps you to do all these different kind of slice and dice analysis. Yeah. So with that, now this is my last slide. So this is how we tie back to the value proposition which we were discussing. Because if you remember now, what you need to do is with this capabilities of analytics, you need to tie it back with your uh, process. You now have the potential of these hybrid transactional analytical apps. You get all the collaboration, notification alerts in real time. You could do the simulation, predictive, infuse it with some of the intelligence. And finally, this is the last stage where you can have the conversational AI, RPA, automated insights and all, which is additional solution from SAP, which is there. Yeah. Now with that, all this, obviously there is a book as well. And one of the important thing, I'll paste this now. If any of you are trying, I mentioned about this book, the author of this. So we have running a discount. I'll probably just put this as well. There is a discount on this, and I'll put the code as well if anybody is interested in further questions. Now with that, I will open for Q&A. And thanks for your patience. And maybe I would just like to take some of the questions, or maybe if there's quite a list here. So if anybody wants to unmute or wants to get into the, please unmute yourself, or if you have a question, then please go ahead.
You want the beach?
Yes. Hello. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, Anirban. This is Anjay. Thank you so much for this session. It's really very informative. I have one quick question, like basic thing. So you mentioned the main difference between the analytics and the EW or data lake thing, right? So are there any additional advantages with the analytics, like are any risks that it comes with? For example, if somebody is running a huge data query, will there be any impact on the S4 HANA system? So will it come with certain risks out of it?
Yeah, so a very good question. Yeah, and if you see, what you are having now is actually you're doing your transaction and analytics in one box. You definitely would need to do a sizing analysis. So based on what is your data, what is available, what is the system size. So how many records. So there is a SAP provides something called as a quick sizer, and then you can get into more details. So you need to provision an adequate amount of memory of HANA. Yeah, so that is one. Secondly, is that when you design, a lot of it will be when you are designing the queries, and when how much if there's a huge data set and running in parallel by multiple people, so do you need this process, or if you can have a filter set? So there are a number of performance optimization which is possible, but important thing is that this would have, and you would have this risk of you'd have to manage this. I would rather say from the sizing perspective and what you are developing and what goes on here. Yeah. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
Some of us missed the first part of it. It's certainly very well attended event. What will be the best way to get recording, or if it was live stream, where can we find it?
Sure. Yes. So what I'll do is at the end of this, I will also post the live stream on the event, on the event notification, and we'll post it. And in any case, if anybody wants this, do ping me also. I will post this as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
And continuing to the before question, with these risks and opportunities, do you see going forward a separate team within organizations having this analytics team, like at least a separate part of the SAP embedded analytics team, or do you think it can be part of the global analytics team, which they also take care of these data lake things?
Yeah. So typically, what happens is, and that's a very good question, because you said that, in any real project, we have this, we have the talent strategy. Because see, what is happening is, there is this existing talent which will know the business process which is currently there. Yeah. And they know, okay, what is the user looking at? So what you might need to relook is, you need to have an upskilling of all this talent. And you can have this in it can be in multiple ways. It can be structured. It can be in your existing analytics team. You can have a separate people responsible for operational analytics. But most important thing is that it should have a very strong touch point with your process as well, yeah, with business. Because what I have seen previously is, if you're doing this in a silo and there is a COE which is only technology focused, and if you're not interacting with the business, because ultimately the value what comes out of this is, let's say if I'm doing a certain new process, what is improving for the business, what is the KPI being impacted, and how can I show it in the balance sheet. So you could have a COE, but important thing is that make sure that the interaction with the business is very, very strong. And this is a business-led exercise as well. Yeah. And upskilling is definitely important. So, well, it's important thing is people already know this stuff. So you maybe upskill your existing resources and have them do this in the project. Yeah. That will be an easier thing.
Thank you.
Okay, I see.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for the presentation. One quick question. Have you ever used S4 embedded machine learning scenarios? And now did you train the scenarios and models so to present lately on the Fiori apps, the different Fiori apps?
Yeah. That's a good question, Joe. So what we have done is, there is actually embedded analytics, there is a separate add-on. So what is called earlier it was called the predictive analytics insight, or PI, and now it's called the intelligent scenario recommendation. So there is a separate plugin. What it does is, you have a data model which you have a CDS view. Just to take an example, you have a CDS view which is your actuals, and then what you do is you are creating another view which has some additions, and you have this view which is enhanced with all the predictive aspects as such. Yeah, and there is a additional component now, analytics inside. You need to have this training. You have three possibilities. Either you could do some simple scenarios like regression and all kind of classification and things like this, natively trained on S4 HANA box itself. But obviously, if you look at this, will again cost more memory, yeah, and again more time, and you have the transaction. Or you could take it out to something like what SAP has this, what they call the BTP, the business technology platform, and there are these services, machine learning services. So you have an S4 box interacting with the machine learning services from BTP. And another example is you have the SAC Analytics Cloud, which has some what we call is some automated insights available as. So these are your three options for this. Yeah. Okay, I see.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Just one basic question, one or two basic questions I have. So being a SAP BW background, currently what we are saying is S4 is replacing most of the analytics space. So in which scenario should be proposing that we should go for CDS view based reports or for BW based reports which were currently there? And secondly, that how to activate the standard content for S4 embedded analytics.
Yeah. Okay. So first question, but the thing is, there is possibility of extension in if you're if the data source is only S4, yeah, or ECC previously. That is the sweet spot for converting it to S4 HANA embedded analytics. Now, the data warehouse, what you also do is you actually have this for multiple data sources. Yeah, you have data coming from, let's say your Ariba, or you have Concur, or you have like from a planning engine or Anaplan or many other sources. Now, whenever there is a mashup, whenever you need to have data from multiple sources, that is a candidate which you should not be doing in S4HANA, and you should actually use the data warehouse. Second thing is histories. You should not be doing reports like, what is my last 3 years analysis or last 2 year analysis. Depend upon the data volume and the size of your company. So basically all the historic, like long, so operational reporting, as I think there was a question earlier, because you are actually using the existing CPU. So you should not be doing a large scale historical reporting also out of the operational system. So that will be again a use case for DW or a data warehousing, or you, and now you have the possibility, because the entire thing on S4 is changing, and you also have like what will be your data warehousing strategy. Will it be in cloud? Will it be on-prem? How do you migrate? So that's you need to have that strategy also aligned with this as well. Yep. And your second part was, how do we, sorry, I missed the second part, was what is?
So is there any standard content, like in BW side, we have standard reports, we simply activate them. So in S4 embedded analytics, is there any process to activate the standard content? How to get that add-on?
Yes, yes. So basically, you see, one important thing is S4 HANA embedded analytics comes with more than 1,000+ analytic apps right out of the box. Yeah. When I mentioned, so what we have is, this is all embedded. There is something called as Fiori apps repository. Now it mentions these are the apps, let's say for all the sales apps I require. So you can say all the sales manager, you just put the role, there are services which need to be active. These are out of the box, and then you can get these models. Yeah. So there's no additional license for the ones, the app which is there in this sales order, or I would say the Fiori apps repository. Yeah. So this is what I'll just type in there. So that will be your go-to point. Yeah. And it has step-by-step documentation for activating as well. Yeah. Okay. I say how Lumira reports can be used in embedded analytics. Okay. Now, interesting question. Now you saw the architecture. When I mentioned S4 HANA still has something, what we have remaining, this has a BW engine. Now, because of that BW engine, it is able to convert the CDS view into format called as transient queries, which are available for consumption in Lumira. But you might actually, again, this is a standard way, but you might consider relook at Lumira, because strategically that is not the tool which SAP is. It's not the strategic choice. You have the analytics cloud, SAP Analytics Cloud, which is which I demoed as the strategic future of all the BI tools on the business object sides. Yeah. Okay. So great. Any more questions? What
Hi.
I could, yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I have one question related to the SAC. You have mentioned about during this embedded analytics side, whenever they want to do further analysis, for example, like a sale order, or they have some kind of metrics, they are observing some kind of weird numbers or something, they want to go further analysis. And during the time you mentioned about SAC as well. So the SAC is being part of S4 HANA, or means I'm talking about with respect to the license point of view.
Yes, yes.
Or do they need to go and activate, because if you want to buy this license separately, that there would be a licensing.
Yes. So yeah. So there is an S4 HANA cloud version which has a embedded component of analytics cloud, what is called the OEM component. So that is available in SAP S/4HANA, the cloud version, which is the true SaaS model. Yeah. But if you're looking at on-premise, or if you're looking like an S4 deployment in Google or Azure or any of your like AWS cloud as such, but you're basically having the on-premise version, in that case, even the OEM version has limited functionality, but it's for free. But in the OEM version is free, but Analytics Cloud is a separate product of SAP, and you'd have a separate licensing plan. And I think these are all licensing question, would be best answered by the SAP account manager. But yeah, there will be a separate license.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah. So what I would any more questions?
Yeah, really quick. Thanks for the great session, Anirban. One question around what is the guiding principle or guidance around doing historical reporting out of S4 embedded? Of course, we can say that whatever will be stored in S4 is what customer can get, but because we have to have a strategic lens on that, right? So any comment?
Yeah, it's a very, very, very pertinent question, and I think this has two parts actually. First of all, it goes to your data strategy and your migration to S/4HANA. Are you doing a greenfield migration, or are you doing a brownfield where you are bringing the data, or it's a data conversion? Yeah. Now, in case of greenfield, you will have a challenge because to start with the box, it's only the open items that will not have history. Yeah. So it would be a little bit on the customer side as well, where you would have, it's a decision how much history you want to put into the box, because let's say you are starting, or some aggregate value. If it is greenfield, there's nothing there. But if it is a brownfield and you have conversion, then you start off with some history. But again, the challenge is now, going back to your data strategy, you will also need to say that, okay, do I need to bring in all the 5-10 years of data which was there? Or the important thing will be you do some data volume management, and there will be an opportunity for you to do something called as the, use the ILM project and do the data archiving. So only take things which is really important from your business standpoint. But this is a very, very important pre-step for your discussion, and depends upon your data strategy and your migration approach as well. Yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, great. So what I would suggest is we still have around 50 participants as such. Now I would post the link on the on the LinkedIn. I will share this the recording as well. And what else I'll do is, in case if I can offer, in case you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or send me a ping or connect with me, and then we can discuss how, or if I can help any of this from my experience as such. Yeah. Okay, so with that, thanks all for your time. It has been a Saturday night here in India, so really thanks for all of you joining in today. And thanks for people joining in from other parts of the world. So really thank you for your participation, and look forward to connect with you on LinkedIn, and looking forward to have your questions. Okay, thank you then. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you then. Bye. Bye.